Welcome back to Change the Odds, the podcast for marriage and family. We're never meant to be a game of chance. Blaine and Adrian, here we are.
Let's do
Hello,
We're
Kevin.
Back.
We're still talking about becoming friends, partners, and lovers,
Yes.
which implies we're not all there yet.
Correct.
We got work to do.
Yes.
I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah.
Notice Jenny is never on the podcast.
Interesting.
Reason for that.
Which is?
She would tell the truth, right?
Don't want to air the dirty laundry.
No.
Avoid all
Yes,
truth.
we can, as long as we keep her off to the side. It's like, hey, this guy's an expert.
Yeah,
Look at
he knows.
him.
Look at
Yeah.
him. Nobody's
brilliant.
telling him, you're wrong, Kevin.
Is that ring real or not? No, Jenny is not a big fan of being on stage, but we're going to get her on the podcast.
Yeah.
She will. I think she'll do it for you guys.
I hope so.
I
think
want that to happen.
it will
and
be
Jenny
fun.
is so gifted in so many things that
no question.
she's helping this podcast out without even knowing it.
Oh, no question. Designing logos, all sorts of things in her free time, in her spare time. All right, Blaine and Adrian, here we're kind of in a part 2 in the midst of, we got a mini series in the midst of a larger series. So we are gathering with 500 of our closest friends on Wednesday nights, studying this idea of becoming friends, partners, and lovers, available on Amazon or changetheodds.com. And so last week we looked at the first part on this topic of respect. So don't forget, friendship built on trust, partnership built on respect, intimacy built on vulnerability. And really, what you can't have vulnerability until trust and respect are growing. Trust and respect need to be out in front with vulnerability coming behind. And so last week we looked at what is respect and then also what isn't respect. And so in this talk, we're going to get into some more granular kind of detail of what are some ways that we actually show disrespect to each other. And look, how do I feel disrespected? And so we'll come out of the conversation and maybe just ask of what you just heard, what's one way that you feel disrespected? It doesn't have to be necessarily by your spouse. It can be by other people. Maybe that's safer. I don't know. Or
Let's dive in.
or if you just want to dive in,
It's been a weekend.
let me watch. We can go
What
from
the
there.
people really want.
Yeah. But I think this is a very meaningful talk as we not only get into some practical details of how we show disrespect and how we want to stop doing that, but we're also going to look at, are there times in which we should not respect our spouse? And what do those times look like? And then we're going to close with the concept of, if I'm struggling to show my spouse respect, but they deserve it, what's going on inside of me? So let's go inside the Worship Center at Bayside Granite Bay, where we're going to have this discussion of respect, part 2.
What does disrespect really look like? What are the small things that are maybe unknowing to us, kind of creating this concept of disrespect? And then we're going to look at, well, what are some times that we shouldn't really respect our spouse, and what do we do about those things? But then also, if our spouse deserves respect, but we fail to give that to them, what is it that's going on inside of us, and how can we get to work on those types of issues? So the primary purpose of the previous session and this one as well is really one of great awareness. So there's not going to be a lot of, here's exactly what you need to do. I want you to get in the mindset of begin to recognize, oh, here's what we are doing. And is that purposeful or not? Is that intentional or not? So much of this really does come back to, we fall into some unintentional habits. We drift into this concept of disrespect, and there's a price that comes from that. And yet, if we will open our eyes, recognize what we're doing, begin to take ownership, and then intentionally try to begin to create and build the values and the concepts that we want in our marriage and our relationship, it can make a tremendous difference. So we're just going to look at a few things now of how can we intentionally begin to show respect. So what are some ways that spouses unintentionally create, or sometimes intentionally create, and show disrespect? So here are a couple ideas that we have. One is ignoring or dismissing their partner. So it is this idea of my ideas really don't matter to you. And so very quickly, instead of listening, processing, communicating with, help me understand that. Where does that belief come from? How did you develop that? How have you seen that work within your own life? It is a very quick, just kind of backhanded, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the life that I have. Notice what that is. That is contempt. It's easy for me when my kids were little, not easy now. When my kids were little, it was easy for when little Silas, 4-year-old Silas, ran up to me and said, here's my idea, Daddy. It would be easy for me to go, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're a 5-year-old kid. I'm a 40-something-year-old man. I know the truth. I can't do that to Jenny. And Jenny can't do that to me. Maybe this is a part of my own personality. There are few things that irritate me more than when somebody just kind of swats away an idea that I've had as if I don't have any brains whatsoever. Now here's the thing. You can disagree with me all day long. All day long. You can listen, try to understand the concept and go, man, I don't think that's right. And whenever you disagree with me, that causes me in the moment to go, maybe I'm not right. Man, I respect this person. They're listening to me. They're not on board. I wonder if I've got it wrong. But whenever you just hear what I have to say, because I'm generally not an idiot, when you hear what I have to say and just dismiss it, I actually become more confident that I'm right. I'm like, you just didn't think through what I had to say right there. And it really is a feeling of disrespect. Whenever we just, again, we want to honor the minds and the brains and the ideas of what our spouse has. And so whenever we don't place them right in our lives and we displace them, that is a sign of disrespect. Speaking harshly or criticizing. Notice the difference again that we've talked about before. So many of you are new or you're watching online kind of for the first time. There is a difference between critiquing something and criticizing a person. We can critique ideas. We can critique decisions that we made. We can critique whether or not we should do that again or we made the right call. We can critique all those things. We don't want to criticize the heart of our spouse. So there's a major difference even in how we might say, hey, I wish we wouldn't have done that versus you and your heart is evil or wrong or you don't care, you don't know, you don't understand. These kind of all defining concepts of who this person is. And listen, and we all get tired. We are all imperfect in this area and we need to have a wide strike zone. Here's the beauty of respect. When respect is present and you speak harshly to your spouse, they can receive that kindly and compassionately and go, oh, he's having a bad day. Oh, she's having a tough moment. The kids are difficult. Work is all these things. And when respect is present, we actually have a wide tolerance level, now a window of tolerance is what psychologists would call it, regarding receiving some of this harsh speaking or criticism. When respect isn't present, then speaking harshly and criticizing really is like stabbing with a sword. It speaks to the very heart of who we are. Now, here's where the balance has to come in this, I think. There is a balance between we all have these moments and we have to be very careful about the freedom we feel around our loved ones and just speaking loosely however we want to speak. Because here's the truth. Many of you in this room will speak to your wife in a way that you would never speak to me, ever. I remember back in Arkansas, I came in one day, gonna do a wedding, and I just happened to walk in we had one of our staff members' wives was kind of our wedding coordinator there at the church. So any wedding done at the church, they would have to go through her. And I walked in one day as this person was reaming her out. And I walked up and they looked up and they saw me. And immediately they changed. And I just said, hey, help me understand. You would never speak to me that way. Why are you speaking to her that way? Because with me, it's like, oh, he's the pastor. So there's a weight that's there, a value that's there. Well, why didn't she get that? Let me ask you, dear friends. Again, there's a vulnerability, no doubt. None of us are perfect. I'm not saying that at all. Why are we so quick to yell at our spouses when we wouldn't do that with anybody else? Now, and I get that houses are different. And I in no way am I trying to say that your house should be like my house. And you heard me talk already about the idea of emotions trail with Jenny and I, because we're much more head and gut. So Sunday night I'm in North Carolina and I do the whole head, heart, gut thing that I did with y'all a couple weeks ago. And the pastor at this church in North Carolina, he and his wife were on staff with us back in Arkansas years ago before they had kids, young marrieds, all those kind of things. And so I talked about, man, I lead with my head, and so heart kind of trails behind. So I'm not as emotional, not as demonstrative in those kind of ways. And Stephen told me later that Haley went, huh? And he leaned over and said, oh, do you not believe that? And she goes, no, that explains a lot. And so I get it. Some homes are going to be more emotionally driven than others. I get that. But I do think that we live in a time of freedom culturally where somehow it's acceptable to yell at our spouse and our kids in a way that just does not make logical sense to me. How does it really help parent your child if you're constantly yelling at them. It just doesn't process or compute with me. And yet that's how many of us were raised. And no doubt we get agitated, and I'm not perfect about this at all. But why would I yell at Jenny? Disagree? Yes. Discuss? Yes. Figure it out? Absolutely. But to lash out with a tone, and notice, tone matters here. Contrary to what my 13-year-old sister thought at the time, tone matters. She used to tell my mom all the time, it's not my tone doesn't matter. And Mom would say, yeah, it's your tone that's the issue. Tone communicates. And so we got to make sure to notice that I would say a great deal of disrespect falls right there at number 2. Number 3, this idea of withholding affection or attention, the thing about the silent treatment. Now there is a process of we're internal processors, and so I don't want to say anything right now that would be the wrong thing. There does need to be that kind of space that's given, but to go hours and days and weeks to where you are intentionally now withholding this affection and attention in a silent treatment in order to punish your spouse, that is a disrespectful kind of concept. A failing to keep promises or follow through. We talked about that in the previous one. A disregarding of boundaries. We talked about that previously as well. Speaking negatively about their spouse to others. So there are some safe spaces in which you need to process what your relationship is all about. And we should all have friendships of the same gender in which you can safely say, hey, here's what's going on. But here's the thing. You want to make sure that those relationships are with people who value marriage. What you don't want to do is have some single friends who maybe have gone through divorce, and now you go to them and you run down your wife, or some single women who've gone through the divorce, and you go to them and you run down your husband, because if you're not very careful, what will happen is they will run down your spouse with you and run down the institution of marriage. You want people in your life who love you and love your marriage. You have the freedom to go to them and say, hey, here's what's going on, and I'm dealing with this, and they can give you good advice, they can support you, they can love you. But what you don't want to do is just in the office say, oh man, can you believe she did this? I can't think of a single time. I mean, my office mates, many of them are here in the room right now. If they can recount a time in which I've talked poorly about Jenny in front of them, that's just off limits because I want to respect her in every way I can. So prioritizing other people or things over their spouse, that is disrespectful. I know many people who serve like crazy everybody else, but then don't serve at home very well. Rejecting their partner's influence or input. I should have looked at this list a little bit better to realize I've already talked about some of this stuff. Using manipulation, control, or expressing contempt again, and then also neglecting emotional, spiritual, or physical intimacy. So the silent treatment is one thing. Now, what number 10 is saying is not being intentional to nourish these things, to just leave these kind of things to drift and however they take place. That's actually an act now of disrespect. So let's talk briefly about when should we not respect our spouse. There are times in which your spouse is not worthy of respect. What are those times? It is the idea of abuse. Again, adultery, so that consistent betrayal of trust, whether it be just adultery or the idea of lies, also manipulation. When they show contempt and refuse to take responsibility, so you don't necessarily give respect to somebody who's also not willing to give respect in return. When they abandon their responsibilities, and so this basic concept of we all have a responsibility to give equal effort and energy. We're talking about taking care of the house. We're talking about jobs, talking about all those kind of things. When they abandon what is their natural kind of role within that, then you can begin to question how much respect beyond the base level that they should be given. And then when they expect respect, without respect being mutual. Ideally, this is a reciprocal relationship that is growing. Whenever it's one-sided, and let's face it, in many ways, this is kind of an old-fashioned marriage. An old-fashioned marriage decades ago, you would see this idea of the wife is expected to respect her husband, but sometimes he doesn't respect her in return. That's an unhealthy relationship. We want this to be reciprocal in every way possible. So let's talk about a couple of unfair reasons that we tend to disrespect each other and that aren't necessarily fair. So those are the fair ones, but here's some unfair ones. And that is, there are times in which there is an expectation of perfection of our spouse. And when they can't meet that standard, we start showing a disrespect toward them, which is completely unfair. So that's going to be a problem that's within us, that we have an unfair expectation, that we don't recognize that our spouse is as imperfect as anybody else. And now we're holding them to a standard that nobody could possibly meet in any way. And oftentimes what's happening in that moment is we are trying to create a standard that they can't meet so that we feel justified in our disrespect. Something else that causes disrespect that's unfair is whenever we fail to confront conflict, that resentment grows. And as it begins to grow over time, we begin to grow bitter and resentful toward our spouse. And so much of it goes back to some issue in the past that we just never have worked through in some way. This is one of the powerful aspects of forgiveness as we actually confront the issues that are going on in our lives. But whenever we don't do that, and we basically, it was what Gottman talks about, kind of gunny sacking, that basically we carry this gunny sack here and we take the unresolved conflict, put it in here, and we just wait. And we're going to throw it right back at them as soon as they do anything. And that is now a disrespectful act that they don't deserve in any way. Whenever we now are prioritizing everything else over our spouse, that is a disrespect that they will feel whether we understand it or not. One of the great ways we disrespect, this is where I'm probably primarily guilty. At what point do I put my phone down and does Jenny get my full attention? And instead of living in this constant partial attention. If I did that to you, you would feel it. It would impact you. Think about it. I'm on the plane this week, right? And the person next to me is talking, and I'm okay, but I've talked a lot, right? And so there comes a point I just pull out my phone. Guess what? They stop talking. Like, yes, it worked, right? Well, think about this. If we use this at times to get people to stop talking to us, why are we surprised when our spouse feels a little bit offended when they're trying to talk to us and we're using our phone now as a shield of what is taking place? So we need to recognize they don't deserve that. This idea of there is an aspect that some spouses have of when love is right, my spouse should just understand who I am and what I need and know what's going on. And when they don't, then I'm offended and I show disrespect to them. There's no way your spouse can understand that. I don't know half the time what I need or what I think. How is Jenny going to figure that out? And yet if we have this false assumption of, well, they're just my soulmate, it's a perfect love, they should just know exactly, I shouldn't have to tell them what to buy me for Christmas. They should just know. Good luck. You have to teach me how to love you. I have to teach you how to love me. And whenever we're not training each other on how to do that, on what is it that I need. Here's a great homework assignment for every single person in this room. Make a list for your spouse. Whenever you do one of these 5 things, I feel tremendously respected by you. When you do these things, when you say this, when you do that, when you act in this way, list them out and figure out what does your spouse uniquely need. Because we're all different in some ways. I mean, it really kind of does go back to the love languages to some extent. That what is it that makes me feel respected? All right, how can I communicate to Jenny so that she will know, hey, this is what I need. In the same way that you can communicate that with your coworkers, with your friends, with your bosses, all those things. Here's the truth for me. For me as a worker here at Bayside, my bosses aren't here, so I can say this. Don't share this with them. A raise does very little for me. It just does very little. I mean, it's a nice hit when it happens, but then beyond that, it just quickly fades. For one of them to look me in the eye and say, man, Kevin, thank you for this. You did this. This was excellent. This was well done. I am much more a words of affirmation guy than I am money in the bank. Now, don't tell them, because I would like a salary. But it just doesn't do it for me. So they need to know that, right? Well, what about for your spouse? Because it could be that there are ways that you are trying to show respect, but it's not how they feel respected. And so to have this open communication, man, here's what I love. When you do this, it just means something to me. You've heard me say before, Jenny has told me before, that when I clean the kitchen, she feels respected. Because what she sees is, all right, you're in this with me. We're in this together. And so when I fail to do that on a consistent basis, I'm now making her feel like she's being taken advantage of, and I'm making her feel disrespected. Well, that's not what I want. So get in and clean the kitchen, right? But let's be honest, here's one thing that we tend to overlook. A great amount of disrespect that we show to others is the fact that we do not respect ourselves. And we actually project upon others the very pain and sorrow we feel within our own hearts and souls. And one way to cultivate a respect in your marriage is to begin to live a life that, first of all, you can look in the mirror and respect yourself. Again, not perfection, but walking in the love of Jesus and forgiveness of Jesus. I'm growing and I'm going and I'm doing what I'm called to do. But then to begin to work through some of the unmet needs you've had from your past so that you can show to this most intimate a relationship that you have the respect and the value that you actually want to show. But until you deal with the past, it's going to keep on repeating in your present. But the moment you begin to process through some of those unmet wounds and needs that were there, because a great deal of disrespect, notice this, think about what stonewalling is, where I'm not going to say anything. It's the same thing as yelling. Yelling and stonewalling are the exact same thing. What is it? It is, I will not have this conversation with you. So I can either emotionally shut down so that you will stop talking eventually, or I'm going to lash out to try to overpower you so you will stop talking. Either way, we don't have to have this conversation. And what's happening is we're trying to protect our hearts. Well, here's the thing. If you need to protect your heart from your spouse, protect it. But you got to ask yourself the question, am I really supposed to be protecting my heart right now? Or will they actually treat it right? And this way that I'm tempted to run, I actually need to lean in, place my heart out on the table, control my tone, engage, but not be overbearing, and actually process what's going on here. Because there's very few things I think as respectful as this. For me to hand Jenny my heart and say, I trust you. That to me is the ultimate respect. I'm not doing that with all you jokers. I don't know how you'll treat me. And many of you, I love you and you're great. And I'll give you parts of myself, no doubt. Jenny gets it all. Why? Because she has vowed to treat me right. There's no greater respect or honor that I can give than that. And if I know she will do that, then it becomes my life pursuit to make sure that I've created a climate in which she can do that with me. And if you can get to that place, there becomes very little limits of what you can or cannot do. Respect is so important. All right, Q&A, here we go. Blaney, welcome.
Test. Oh, there we go. Don't call me Blaney. Come on, my name's Blaine.
All right, so Jenny's filtering through. You can text marriage to 56316. Blaine and Adrian, we're going to ask some questions. Don't forget to go to Change the Odds, the podcast, and like it. That way, Blaine, Adrian, and I can feel some self-worth and value around here.
Very important for us to feel that.
We just need more views than Mark Clark. That's all we need.
We know we got him, buddy. You're the best author. Let's hear for Kevin Thompson tonight. Awesome job. So we got about 12 questions here. If we get through them all, great. If not, we got more for tomorrow or next week. Let's just start right off the top. What are the signs that a marriage is worth fighting for versus letting go?
Yeah, that's a great question. Signs it's worth fighting for versus letting go. So first of all, if there is active addiction, abuse, or adultery, I would go with a counselor, sit down with a professional counselor and ask, can we work through this? A Christian counselor would be great. Can we work through this? Or will they look at that and say, you know what, I think this is now unresolvable, right? So you have that issue of what's going on. For every other relationship, I would say this. Some relationships do come to an end. I get that. But if it's going to come to an end, at least earn the right to make sure that's going to happen. And what I mean by that is make sure you've done everything in your power to give this relationship the best chance it can have. And so what that means is me and my partner are going to go to counseling. Well, he won't go. Okay, I'm going without you. And I'm going to go and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say, hey, the appointment is Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And she says, I'm not going. And he goes, well, I'm going anyway. And at Tuesday at 7 o'clock, I'm going to show up. I'm going to tell my story to the counselor, counseling at BaysideOnline.com over here. And I'm going to work through, is there something I'm doing? Is there something I can improve? I'm going to make sure I've done everything in my power to make this work. And if at the end of that process, she doesn't want it, he doesn't want it, or we can't reconcile it, okay, then how can we unwind this in the least painful way possible for me, for my family, if there's kids, all that kind of thing. What I don't want to do is, well, it's just not working, I'm going to move on. Well, you haven't earned the right to do that. I don't know if that's a phrase that we're allowed to use around here, but I just used it. Okay.
I think it's good. How do we navigate parenting when we have different styles?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say for Jenny and I, parenting has probably been the most difficult aspect of marriage because we do have different styles, right? So Jenny is firstborn, more assertive, right? Secure relationship, secure attachment. I am secondborn, much more passive, much more, it'll work out. They'll figure it out. Even today, right? It's the idea of texting, hey, Ella's not awake, going to class. Well, she'll figure that out. And Jenny's like, yeah, because I'm going to wake her up. But here's what I think what you can do. Begin to appreciate that sometimes your spouse's way is better than your way. And sometimes your way is better than their way. And begin to parent together. You try to negotiate, navigate. What are some basic rules that we're going to have? What are some basic guidelines that we're going to follow? And then there are other times in which we just stand back. I mean, there were times, I remember specifically, for those of you that read the book Fearless Families, you know kind of the experience that Silas went through with his anxiety. There were times I'd look at Jenny and I'd be like, you try. My way's not working. And then there'd be other times in which she'd come to me and she goes, hey, you try. My way's not working. And so instead of looking at that as, oh my goodness, we're on a different page here, what are we going to do? Look at this as, hey, we have two different approaches available to us. What's going to work best in this situation? And then leverage that for the best of your ability of how to move forward.
That's great. How do I set boundaries if I'm finding my partner is breaking trust multiple times? So broken trust multiple times. How do I set boundaries?
Yeah, so I mean, I would come back to what Blaine's favorite author has said. You just think about what's mine, what's theirs, and what's God's. and so I'm willing to now say, what do I control? And I'm going to clearly communicate to my spouse, here's what I'm willing to do and not willing to do. This isn't a threat. I'm not putting an ultimatum out there. I'm just saying, I control me. Here's what I'm willing to do and not willing to do. I am not willing to consistently deal with lies. I'm just not willing to do that. And so let's figure it out. Here's what I am willing to do. I'm willing to help. I'm willing to go to counseling. I'm willing to go to a class. I'm willing to read a book. I'm willing to figure out what my part is in all of this, but I am not willing to continue to have this happen. If you're in a situation where it's just a continual affair after affair after affair, I'm not willing to be married to this. I'm not willing. Now, you can either change your ways and we can figure that out, or we're going to go separate ways, but you begin to clarify, what do you control? Take ownership of that. Tell your partner, hey, I'm willing to help you with all of this if you're willing to let me. And then in the end, you leave to God what is the actual outcome. But if there's continual trust that's being broken, I would say either call our care center, call the counseling center. Continual brokenness of trust is something that probably needs some significant outside help. You've already not solved it on your own.
Right.
So get some help to try to solve it.
Paige?
Now, I didn't write this, but I do relate. Why am I so quick to anger with my husband, and how can I change this?
Whoa.
Well, okay.
Let's get after it.
Did you write that? So I think that is a beautiful question. Here's what the issue is. We all have these basic attachment needs. We need to be seen and valued and heard and understood and loved. And think about how God created humanity. That the only defense mechanism we have are relationships. That's it, right? Shark has teeth, right? A bee has a stinger. What do we have? We only have relationships. And so we are highly attuned to needing those relationship needs met because they are a symbol that we are safe in connection. And so whenever we feel any sense of disconnection, of detachment, whenever those attachment needs are not met, fight or flight begins to kick in. So it should not surprise us that we actually struggle the most in marriage and in parenting because those relationships are the most important things to us. So it's not shocking that you'll have the calmest guy ever in every other corner of life who then finds himself feeling emotions and anger and frustrations that he's never experienced anywhere else. Or you have the most saintly woman of all time who can navigate all these different issues, but whenever it comes to her husband and kids, she can lose it in a flash. It's because those unmet needs of attachment are there and fight or flight kicks in. Now, then we leverage what the body is doing to recognize, all right, what needs are unmet? And how can I begin to communicate those in a healthy way? We pay attention to what the body is saying and doing. We'll look at this whenever we talk about communication, that you begin to pay attention to your heart rate, your tone of voice, the angst that's within you as a sign of, okay, something important is happening here. Now, how can I make sure that need is getting met instead of lashing out in a way that's actually gonna further disconnect me? It's a great question.
Great, yeah. Okay, how do you tell your spouse that you don't feel respected in a respectful way?
Yeah, pass the microphone to Jenny. No, I'm kidding. So I mean, one thing that this looks like for me and Jenny is, we're driving home, hypothetically, from a speaking engagement. And she says, hey, honey, I know you love me. I know you respect me. But that one story, it rubs me wrong. Oh, okay, my goodness, okay. I don't want to do that, right? So I think if you want to be honest, but if you can honestly say, honey, I know you would never intentionally try to hurt me, but whenever you do this, here's how I feel. So you're owning your own feelings, you're owning what's happening here. And notice this, if your spouse has this conversation with you in the next couple of days, here's what I don't want you to do. Do not do this. Well, I don't mean to. No. She's already said, or he's already said, I know you wouldn't mean to. It's not an idea about, here's what my intention is. Here's the actual response that's taking place. And so you listen, and you can ask a question. Hey, tell me more. Is there other times that come to mind that you feel that way? Because that's not what I want to communicate. So I think a slow startup, remind them of the bigger picture. I love you. I know you love me. I love this. But there's this one thing in here that isn't working well. How can we begin to work on that? That's how I'd go about it.
Are you able to recap the process for a healthy argument? Did you do that?
Well, I just did. No. So we'll talk about that with communication.
Okay.
But a little bit of what I just said, to start slow, to put the context in a bigger picture, to reaffirm the love that we have for each other, and then to make sure that you're going after the issue, not attacking the person. You put proper boundaries around it, and hey, we need to work on this issue, and I know together we can do that. That's the process.
Yeah. Okay, this is a little bit different. What role should extended family play in marriage conflicts, and how do you set boundaries when you feel they're overly involved?
Yeah, what role should they play? None. Here's what you do not want to go to your parents and talk about your husband or your wife. Because think about that. They're wearing multiple hats. So like, let's go with my parents, right? They would take Jenny over me any day. But so my mom wears the hat of Kevin's mom. She also wears the hat of Jenny's mother-in-law. And if I go to her and begin to trash my wife to her, it's putting her in conflict of what she's supposed to do now. And that's an impossible role. And beyond that, she can't solve it for me anyway. All right, there's only two types of people that you want to tell your problems to. Two types of people. Those who can help you and those that it can help. Only those two. Those that can help you and those that it can help. And so my mom is not in a position, because of her role in our lives, she cannot be our marriage counselor. She cannot be my best friend. She can only be my mom, Jenny's mother-in-law, the grandparents of my kids, right? And so I can't go to her with this. I got to go to somebody else. So who can help me? Let's go to that person. Now, after all that's said and done, if we go through something and I'm in a relationship with somebody and I can peel back the curtain and say, hey, Jenny and I went through something very similar to this, and then I can share with that person in a way that can help them process what's going on, those are the only two types of people you tell. You do not tell your parents or your in-laws.
Is marriage counseling effective if only one partner is willing to participate?
Counseling is effective if only one person is willing to participate. Can it positively impact the marriage? Yes, it can. Marriage is a system. If any aspect of that system changes, the whole system has to reorg to some extent. Ideally, both people would be involved. But when it just starts as one, what can happen is as this person begins to grow and they begin to change their behaviors and actions, it provides the opportunity where the other person can do the same. Because what a counselor can do, let's say husband and wife need to go to counseling and she says, hey, I'm going with or without you. And he goes, oh, I'm not going. When she gets in there, she can begin to learn, how do I respond in a secure way? Well, a secure response is going to be a whole lot more healthy than however she was responding before, which will then be better for him, but could also motivate him possibly to action. And for one, to make him see that she's real about this, all those kind of things. So can it help? Yes. Is it ideal? No. Maybe two more.
I got my last one here. What are some practical ways to improve intimacy in a struggling marriage?
Yeah, so we'll look at that here in a couple of weeks. And that'll be a great question to ask Dr. Barbara Wilson, because she's an expert in this area and she helps couples. One aspect is with Barbara specifically, and she sees clients in the area of sexuality. This is one of the greatest returns on investments of counseling can actually come in this area of intimacy, because what feels so unique to us is so common to everybody else. Another aspect that I would look at first and foremost is, okay, vulnerability you're struggling with. How's the trust and respect? Let's work on the trust and respect, work on the friendship, work on the partnership, improve those areas, and then intentionality can begin to assist us with the vulnerability. Most of the times, you've heard me say this a million times, generally speaking, problems do not arise in the bedroom, but they are expressed there. And so generally speaking, the problem is somewhere outside the bedroom, but it expresses itself in the bedroom. And most of the time, it's some kind of crack in trust and respect. Adrian?
Do you have a question? No? Okay. What's one small thing I can do tomorrow to start building more respect if I know it's lacking?
That's a great question. Fixate on something your partner does well and communicate that. Just fixate on it. And maybe you haven't said it before, or maybe you have before, repeat it in some way. Send them a text. Man, thank you so much for how hard you're working for our family. I love you. I can't wait to see you whenever you get home. Hey, I am so grateful for this morning and whenever I got together and the kids were running around the house, and man, just how you love me and love those kids is just a thing that I'm so grateful for. You can just go through a whole list. Begin to take notes of gratitude of everything that your spouse is doing. Recognize all the things you don't have to do because your spouse does them. And begin to thank them for those things. And as you're thinking in positive terms toward them, it will kind of have a momentum in the same way that whenever you think about a negative thing, it will probably lead to another negative thing. Begin to kind of have a mental hack of fixate on that which is positive and that which is good. It's a whole lot easier to build on that which is good than to immediately correct that which is struggling or bad, okay? Communication, money, and sex. So if you have those three things down, this is your last session. You don't have to show up ever again. Let me ask you a quick question. Your last money talk with your spouse, was it positive, and when was it? If it hadn't been within the last month, you need to show up next time. If you never used the wrong tone with your spouse, if you never had a fight, then you're free to go. If not, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And finally, if your intimacy is just off the charts great, man, write a book. If not, we'll see you 3 weeks from now. God bless.
All right, and we're back. What a talk.
Way to go.
What a talk.
Wow.
All right, so let's get into some detail here of ways that we show disrespect. One of the things I talked about in that discussion is few things make me feel more disrespected than somebody not truly considering my idea.
Right. Yeah.
And just kind of slapping it
Yeah.
away. Now, but let's face it, there are times in which that has to happen. You're in the midst of a brainstorming session. We gather together as a group of pastors every Wednesday and go over the sermon for the next week, and everybody's kind of throwing out their ideas. But every now and then I'll say something and somebody will just kind of backhand it away and go on to the next idea as though that's a bad idea of some sort. And it grates on me of, man, that's disrespectful. Like you can disagree with me all day. I have no problem with that. But when you don't take my ideas seriously, because generally speaking, I'm not an idiot.
Right.
Generally speaking. Right. There are exceptions, no question. So that for me is something that gets on me. What is it that for y'all really are ways that you feel disrespected
Okay, if I'm talking like from Blaine, it's when he is on his phone
Yep.
and like kind of half paying attention, or I'm like, Blaine, that.
Yeah.
And then 2 is when
Oh, wow. We got 2.
This is a single
small,
answer.
because overall he's
Oh, yeah.
very respectful. But these are just 2 little things. He's golfing or something or somewhere, and he's like, I'll be home at this time. And he's home an hour later.
Yeah.
Intentions.
And he won't just give me the answer. He always wants to be like positive thinking, like wishful thinking. It's like,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I should be home by
Say
then.
what she wants to hear.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When
Oh,
I
it's
don't
huge.
want you to say what I want to hear, I want you to tell me the truth of like, no, this is when I'll be home. I know it sucks.
Let's sit with this for a minute.
Okay.
I love this.
Yeah.
I
Oh.
love every aspect
Okay, you're
of
welcome.
this. Thank you for bringing this to the table.
Is it because it's about golf?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Thought so.
So this idea, because I see this all the time, and it's so well intentioned
Yeah.
that so Blaine knows what you want to hear. So he wants to appease you, keep you happy. He loves you. He wants you happy, and
Totally.
satisfied, and so he's going to tell you what you want to hear, even while he, in the back of his mind, subconsciously knows that that's possible.
Right.
But that
it's
is-
always possible in Blaine's mind.
That is best case scenario of
yes.
all time.
I don't want best case scenario. I
No.
want truth. I want
Yes.
reality.
And notice, here's what I love about this example is the very thing that Blaine is trying to avoid, your frustration and unhappiness, is the very thing his answer is causing.
Totally. Because even though when you're like, oh, I'm actually going to be home in 2 hours, not 1, I'll be like, oh, okay, fine. But then my mindset is like, okay, I have 2 hours, like rally with the kids until he's home, instead of being like, where is he? Like he
Yes.
said an hour ago, and then I'm like stewing in this anger.
Yes. So let's go back. No, Blaine, you can't talk. So
I was gonna.
let's go back to this idea that we had that part of showing respect is not only doing what I should, but doing what I say. So where this is disrespectful is he's getting into the concept of he's not quite doing what he said he would do.
Yes. Yeah.
But the solution to that is not, well, just do what you say. No, actually what he needs to do is change what he's saying. That's where the flip of the brain has to actually come. And seriously, such a small issue.
Yeah,
and
totally.
yet it has a compounding effect if you're not very careful, because you can actually train your spouse not to trust you or believe you.
Well, and that is where it's gotten to at some points where I'm like, yeah, I'll tell people like, well, he says that, but he won't be home for
yeah.
2 hours. You know, like
Yeah.
I already know.
I'm glad I came. This is fun.
You're not even having to pay a copay for this.
It has happened a lot where you're home an hour later than you said. And like things happen. I get that. Golf goes long or we have a
Well, but
slip.
part of that's the job too. The job is,
Yep.
is
and I totally understand it, but it's just
Fully right. Yeah, fully right. Because I'm just trying to appease, right?
Yeah.
And the progression was, okay, then, she has me on find your phone.
Oh,
So
yeah,
she
I
knows
track
where
him.
I'm
I'm
at
like, you
Oh, yeah.
haven't
to
left
avoid
yet?
the stress. Just a practical
we do
tip,
the same
right?
thing. Yeah.
I sound like a crazy wife.
No, not at all. No, you got a mother of 3 kids at home. And now what's happened is she gets the kids to call me. It's like, you ask Dad when he's coming home.
Well, and they want to.
And they're
They're like,
"Come
where's
on."
Dad? Where's Dad? I'm like, find
call him.
out.
Oh,
You
yeah.
ask him.
But
No,
it-
that's a fair.
But it is interesting, and this isn't to like throw shade on our parenting style, but I can hear it in Cash's voice now. Like,
Yeah.
oh, Dad, what are you doing, Dad? So, and we're doing a book where we're starting to learn like the 7 primal questions, like what kind of makes kids tick, or what makes us go.
Yeah.
And you can see it in your own kids, right? This kind of thing. So, and it's very interesting. And I take all the information and it's truth, and I'm not here to defend it, but it is a good thing. And I do it with other people because I want the best for you,
Absolutely.
Kevin. You have a good golf game. I just need you to see it. You know what I'm saying? Believe it.
I know, but you got to be careful.
But it will not be true.
It's so well intended. It just shows.
I know, I get that.
It just shows how some of our faults and flaws are not necessarily ill intended.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just it is a little bit of not seeing the full picture of what's going on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, here's the thing, Blaine. Now you can come guns fully loaded.
All right, I'm ready.
Oh, we're not out of time? Okay.
Well, I never feel disrespected.
I love my life. There was 2 things for me. Now, you had 2? No.
Oh, there you go.
But,
Yep.
but one actually happened recently in another conversation where one of my things is I like to be needed. I like to have purpose, and I wanted to help out. And in this conversation, I was waiting for a thank you back for the things that I was doing to help someone, and they weren't doing it. And I felt disrespected in that. I'm like, even though I know I don't really need it or want it, but I kind of do. But I felt this. Did you not see me here?
Yeah.
Did you not, include me in your ideas of how I helped you do this thing or get through this thing? So that was interesting to me now that we're talking through that lens. And that happened recently. And the other one that was on the list was just this, because we had a bit of this at the start of our relationship more so, was the withholding of physical touch, right? So it's like using it as a weapon almost in terms of like, I think it's part of the being needed moment, but at the same time, just rub my back to show me that you love me, right? That you see me, that you appreciate me, that you respect me, and that sort of thing. So those are the two that kind of jumped out to me.
Yeah. Well, and with that, there is on one hand this idea of, look, when we feel disconnected, it's okay to have time to process, and I don't always feel like I want to touch you at this very moment, right? But then there does become this weaponization of that specifically. And so I think about the silent treatment, the cold shoulder, those kind of things. Couples, that really is a warning flag, I think, within a relationship. It's one thing if, hey, I need a little bit of time to cool off. That's totally fine. But I'll hear couples on occasion say, oh, we'll go 3 weeks and not talk. And I'm like, hey, hang on. Wait,
No.
wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, I can't even process that concept. And so to begin to look at what are the patterns of what's going on there is something I think is we got to watch out for. I do want to just hit on this idea of there are times, as we talked about in the talk, there are times our spouse does not deserve respect. And when there's active addiction, abuse, adultery, those things are going on when they refuse to give respect back. So we talked about in the talk, there's a base level respect every human being deserves, and then the rest of it really is earned. And we have to come up with our part of that to get the respect that we deserve. But there's another aspect that we often forget. When I'm in a good relationship and I'm failing to show respect to my spouse, which I think is a lot of where our listeners probably are. Why am I disrespectful at times? All right, we got to look at what's going on inside of us.
Right.
That those are unmet attachment needs that we have. And because that hurt and that pain is there, we're kicking into fight or flight, and we're beginning to lash out toward our spouse, which, as we said before, is a safe space. We're lashing out toward them as a way to try to get them to see the pain that we have.
Correct.
Totally.
It's not fair,
Right.
but it's what happens. And what I want couples to begin to do is begin to recognize that within themselves and then go, okay, how can I now properly communicate that these needs are unmet?
Right.
That, I recognize my tone here. And we're all going to have bad tone and all those kind of things. But I recognize there's an angst within me. What's going on? Okay, let's take a step back and look at the emotions that are going on underneath us. And then how can we, instead of trying to hurt our spouse so they will see our pain, because that will never work, how can we communicate to our spouse? Hey, I need you. I need connected. I need, that kind of thing. Do y'all ever see that in y'all's?
Oh, yeah. And that takes so much self-control to not lash out in anger and sometimes we've had moments where it's like, I only feel like you hear me if I'm yelling or crying or something,
Breaking point.
Yeah. When I'm at my limit, then you respond. Otherwise it's just me talking to you're like, oh, don't care. Just don't worry about it.
Okay.
What is that? Stonewalling?
Stonewalling, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting there
Not a lot,
is,
but it has happened.
No, and those are the biggest issues, in our marriage, right? Is this Blaine is the appeaser. He wants to keep everybody happy. Just like before when we're talking about this idea of Blaine talking to the group, oh, let's go on the thing. Let's do the thing. And Adrian can then tell the group, guys, it's just a dream right now. It's going to be, maybe this won't happen. So don't be disappointed if it, no, it's all good. It's a good balance when you find the healthy version of
no
that.
doubt.
Right. But to her point, it's like, no, I don't want to necessarily deal with that. Avoid it. And no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And then only when I know, oh my gosh, she's serious. This is not good. That's when we deal with it.
But I think one thing y'all can work on, this is not a major issue at all. But you can continue to improve in this area is, Adrian, you can begin to look at, okay, am I too dependent upon Blaine to soothe me and calm me at times?
Yes. I already know that answer.
because if that's what I'm doing, okay, that's great. Great that he's there, great that he can do that. But then what that is that's actually inviting him now to downplay some of my real concerns at other times where I don't want to be calmed down. I want the issue taken care of.
Right.
And so you can recognize, all right, how can I begin to learn to soothe myself a little bit more and not lean on him to have to do that. At the same time, Blaine, to begin to recognize that whenever you do dismiss whenever you try to calm what are really issues that need to be solved, you are actually inviting her into a more erratic state to communicate to you because it's not working.
I'm not getting through.
It's not working,
Yeah.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And so it's interesting how y'all can see your pattern, how you're playing off each other. Again, extremely healthy dynamic that y'all have going on, but just these kind of minor things of, because it's easy for us to get in the mindset of, well, yeah, of course, sometimes I can cause the erraticness because I'm having to always calm. No. All right. Let's start seeing how I'm actually inviting the very behavior that I actually don't want and how I'm creating something within the other partner that a better response would actually assist them in how they're responding.
Yeah.
What would a response look like then for this situation? This is like real tangible for us right now.
Which one specifically?
So let's say, okay, it's okay. Shh, it's going to be fine versus what should I do? So yeah, this sucks. Let's go after it together.
So for me and Jenny, our dynamic is switched here.
Okay.
So one thing that Jenny does to me is to ask the question, hey, do you want me to listen or do you want me to solve it?
Okay. Good.
So just ask the question. You want me to listen to this? So because there are times in which I come home, I'm my coworkers.
Yeah.
I come home and I want to, and Jenny's like, all right, well, let's go. No, you do not.
Right. Okay.
I just need you to talk through this.
Yeah,
with me.
yeah.
And then there are other times in which I'm like, so can you do something about that? because of how our personalities are different.
Yeah, that's good.
And so that would be one thing. And the second recommendation I would have is get in the habit of saying, and this is I stole this from Tim Ferriss, and I think it's a great concept. On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is this to you? And 7 is not available.
Right.
And so if it is, this is a 3. Okay. I don't really have to calm her. I don't really. All right. If this is a 9. All right, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
There's action that needs to be taken to solve this. And then I think Adrian can begin to learn to say from the get-go, because I have to recognize for Jenny. Jenny's an action-oriented person, right?
Yeah.
And I have to recognize for her, so she's going to kick into action very quickly. Let me communicate to her. Hey, let me just tell you what's going on. Not go do something about it. Let me just tell you. And that then assists her to get in the framework of how she's actually supposed to listen.
And even you saying, this is a 2, Jenny, almost de-escalates yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
That's
If
what I'm
I know I'm going to be calm and I'm going to say this is a 9, I don't look like it's a 9, but it is. I need you to accept it as a 9. Then I could be calm because I know he'll receive it.
100%.
But
What's a 9?
Ooh.
Yeah. Do you remember anything that's a 9?
well, we don't.
Or 3?
Next episode.
Let's come back and think about
Join
that.
us.
Forgot where I was for a second.
I love it. All right, so respect, such an important topic, and in the next few episodes, we're gonna cover the big issues. We're going money.
Yeah.
We're going communication. We're going intimacy.
Yeah.
All in the journey of becoming friends, partners, and lovers. Until next time, have a great day.